focused. They want, nay, they need a distraction from the day in, day out stumbles of life. Let's get digitally distracted. All right, so digitally distracted. Yes, it is officially back, but that is not the only thing that is returning. Suikoden is back, baby. Well, I mean, not quite. Let's not call it a comeback. Some of the original developers are back with a Kickstarter for a brand new game, Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes, which is clearly a Suikoden-esque game with Yoshitaka Moriyama at the helm. And as a Suikoden fan, it just seemed like the perfect returning episode topic for Digitally Distracted. And with me today, I've got John with an H, don't forget it, from the Suikoden Revival Movement, a group that has been fighting the good fight to keep all things Suikoden alive. So John, welcome to Digitally Distracted.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course. Now, before we get into Eiyuden Chronicle and the Suikoden series in general, our main topic for today, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself? You're also known as the Dreamy Warrior, as far as I know, very dreamy, and then maybe tell us a little bit about the Revival Movement.
Okay, well, I'm John. I do a little bit of streaming over on Twitch.tv. I like doing lots of retro RPGs, and of course, I'm all from Original Hardware, so I've invested into doing that. So I'm pretty much just a retro gamer at heart. Like, I really don't, I mean, I own the newer consoles, but I don't invest as much time in them. There's so much stuff in my backlog I have to get caught up on, a lot of games that people recommend. And then I'm also involved in the Suikoden Revival movement. And, we've been at that for about 8 years, trying to lobby for more Suikoden content, whatever form it may come out in. Recently, we did the Suikothon, which was a couple of weeks ago, where a lot of speedrunners, participated in RPG Limit Break for 72 full hours, and just a few other stuff like going on, like the Gensui popularity contest on Twitter, which is always a fun annual event. But we try to keep busy with what ways we can, and our goal is to get a Suikoden game. So for people that are wondering, because of the Kickstarter, if that's going to change, we can do both. We absolutely want to still lobby Konami for more Suikoden content.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Obviously, I think Moriyama would say the same, which he has referenced that he doesn't want to, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but, not step on any toes at Konami just because of that. So, being careful to not be too specific that this is clearly Suikoden-esque. In the style and everything, and it just looks really good. But before we get into it, you said something there, Original Hardware, so you're a fellow hardcore Original Hardware producer when it comes to the way you play your games and the way you stream?
Yes, absolutely.
So have you gotten deep into because I'm good friends with the My Life in Gaming fellas who are hardcore in the RGB realm. Have you gotten that deep into it?
Whenever I need to know what kind of chords I need for my upscaler, I always check out those guys, or the best way to capture from X console. Right. They're always my go-to. So yes, they heavily influence my purchasing decisions.
Oh yeah, for sure. I've got the nice direct line to them. So I'm always like, hey, I got the OSSC, try. What do I need to do? What are the optimal settings? Get on the phone right now. But definitely we'll have them on the show too.
Have the OSSC as well. I heard they're coming off the Pro sometime soon, so I'll be interested to see what their take is on that as well.
Yeah, I ran the FrameMeister for a long time, and more recently got the OSSC, and then it's like, oh yeah, there's gonna be a Pro one. It's like, oh great, of course. After I get the original, but it's been great. I've almost completely switched over to the OSSC for any of my gameplay on the flat panel display. Try also got me to get an OLED. One of the LG OLEDs, he convinced me to do it. But anyway, the important thing we got to talk about here is Eiyuden Chronicle. So the Kickstarter launched, it's been like four days ago now?
Yep, we're just starting the fourth day
Yeah,
today.
yeah, right. And it's so the first thing, we knew there was going to be some sort of announcement. The the normies like myself, you probably had some secret knowledge, but I had no clue. I just knew that Murayama was going to be announcing something, and I think he said like in 24 hours, right? I'm going to announce something, and then people are just waiting, and because we assumed it'd be somewhat Suikoden related. We knew he had his own studio going, and he put out this Kickstarter for Eiyuden Chronicle, 100 heroes, 8 shy of being super obvious with the 108, and it it killed Kickstarter
Multiple times. So we have to get like a death counter up for Kickstarter.
yeah, yeah.
So much so that Kickstarter reached out to their team and said, "Hey, we're gonna give you a complimentary extra day at the ends, just because of all the technical difficulties at the start."
Oh wow, I did not know that. So that's cool. So they're going to get an extra day, which clearly they probably won't need because blew the $500,000-ish goal out of the way. I mean, within those, like right around the time it first crashed, right?
Oh yeah. So people are saying like it reached its initial goal probably like in 2 hours, but it probably would have been like just barely over an hour if not for the crashes. Because I think it like crashed when it was like at 400 and something K.
Super
so it was
close.
really close. So I'll say I think it was just like, an hour, maybe 20 minutes would have been what it would take to get that initial goal.
And now it's up to, I've got it right here. Let me do the refresh here. We are at, oh man, outrageous. 2 million, well over 2 million already. $2,463,000 and some change already. And it's, now I know they've been updating like where it was in the sense of most, funded Kickstarters. Do you know what it's at right now? Rank?
The last one I saw was 14th. I'm not sure if it changed since there.
Yeah, that's what I had heard. 14th overall, right? Not just in gaming, just of all Kickstarters.
Yeah.
That's crazy because you think, at least, I sort of got to know the revival movement, many moons ago, many blue moons ago when I first did my Suikoden retrospective, because the Suikoden series has always been my favorite RPG next to Final Fantasy as a series. But, the one thing I always got irritated with Final Fantasy is there'd be one that I loved so much, but we know with Final Fantasy, every game it's a new set of characters, of course, with references, chocobos. You're going to see some cactuars running around, but the characters aren't going to be the same, and the world might not be the same. And with Suikoden, it's just, I love that it's this history and this timeline that continues to build and build and build. And there was something about, it was like the perfect in-between, because, when you and I first played, like the PlayStation was, it was just the console at the time. So it wasn't like we went back and found Suikoden. We knew about it before. It's sort of being rediscovered here and there. It's funny to think it was at least probably 4 years ago that I did my retrospective, and that's sort of where I got in contact with the revival movement. You guys shared out the video, and as somebody sort of bringing light to the game, it did feel even then obscure. And I still think now, prior to this Kickstarter going up, it was still something that you would see articles on gaming sites about, the best RPG you probably never played, and like all these articles, and they would be like, oh, Suikoden 2, game you didn't even know is amazing. Maybe it's the best RPG. And it still felt like, oh, it's this obscure thing that, or maybe people know the name, but they've never really played it. And now, do you think the Kickstarter is going to push people to go play the original Suikoden games, or do you think they're just going to be focused on this new series?
That's a good question. I mean, we still have a long time before Eiyuden comes out, so I think a lot of influencers, YouTubers and stuff are like, they keep referencing what the team is that's behind this project, and praising their previous work, which is getting a lot of people interested in saying like, should I go, where can I get these games? Like, should I go back and revisit them? So I think there is going to be a new gathering of people for the first time playing it.
Yeah, and I know that because I don't know if it was before or maybe slightly after, because one of those early pushes from the revival movement was to get the original games on the PlayStation Network to be able to, have a way to play them now. As far as I know, they're still locked to the PlayStation 3. We don't have access to those to the PS4, which is frustrating. I guess you can do them on the Vita if you do the connection that way, but
yeah, 1 and 2 are available on the Vita. 1 through 4 are available on the PSN for PS3. I think that's more of a Sony mishap than on so much Konami.
Okay.
Who knows with the PS5 if the classics they'll be able to take some stuff off that. We can speculate, but I think that it was really nice for a while, but then I don't know how long it was after we got the digital releases on the PSN, and then to be kind of made on obsolete hardware in a little bit, definitely probably stung.
Yeah, and the PS3 is. I went the PS3 route because my growth through gaming. I started on the NES. Before that, I started with the Vectrex for some reason because that was what my aunt handed down to us. So that was my first gaming experience, and then I got the NES and the Game Boy. And that's where I was like, ooh, I like these game things. First RPG was the original Final Fantasy, and then just went to Super Nintendo, and then it was that thing N64, PlayStation 1, and I had to go PlayStation 1 for the RPGs. Obviously, Final Fantasy 7 was a huge push for me to get the PlayStation. I never got the consoles at release. I just couldn't, afford it. So it wasn't something my family was, what's the next console? All right, we'll get it for you, little gamer David. So we eventually were able to get the PlayStation. I got it from my grandmother for Christmas. I was like, you got to get it at the Electronics Boutique. And Final Fantasy VII was a game I played a lot of. Chrono Cross, huge impact. Loved Chrono Cross. One of those Chrono Cross is better than Trigger people, which triggers people sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very controversial. But just you bring up that name, a lot of people that have played Suikoden keep asking people, hey, what's another game that's like Suikoden? And I always hear that brought up a lot just because of the large cast of characters. But I firmly am in the camp that I think Chrono Cross probably has one of the best soundtracks on the PS1.
Absolutely. Yasunori Mitsuda, right? So good. Nice.
I'm just thinking those overworld themes. I could just leave that on loop forever.
Oh yeah, just stay in the ship. Stay in the ship and listen. Chrono Cross, great game. But then we talked a little bit about this. The way we're kind of going off the Kickstarter, but the first one I played was Suikoden 2, which is often considered the best of the series. And then I kind of went back because I found Suikoden 2 at a rental store that was closing, and they were getting rid of their stock. And I saw, assemble an army of 108 characters on the back. I was like, what? And I was telling you the main character had Tonfa, and I was actually doing some karate at the time, doing some martial arts, and I was learning Tonfa. I was like, that's super awesome. I got to get this. So I fell in love with it. Went back to Electronics Boutique and found a copy of the first game new, because it wasn't that much of a gap between the two games, and back then it was pretty easy to find such games. Picked that up, and it's that weird thing of I still to this day I'm not certain if 1 or 2 is my favorite, because it's just there's definitely a different feel, and I think you feel more like a loner in the first game, obviously because you don't have Nanami, and it's a different feel. But for you, was the original, the very first game, was that your first experience?
Yeah, it was. So it's interesting to hear your take, because I keep wondering, because it was my first, do I have that nostalgic connection, or do others kind of feel the same way? Because it's widely you see top 100 RPGs in various publications, and Suikoden 2 always makes the cut.
Yeah, it's tricky because if I really broke it down, I could probably pinpoint some of the things that. It's funny because I'll always see. They're tweets from the revival movement of ranking, the rankings that have been coming up, and I don't know who it is directly that posts those. Is that you?
No, it's not me.
okay, because sometimes get a little controversial, and I saw one that was ranking the war battles, and Suikoden 2 is. It's not beloved for the war battles as much as I think from an outside perspective, seeing that top-down, very tactical view, it's like, oh, this looks amazing. This is gonna, what is this, Langrisser? What is this? And then or Advanced Heroes, but then or Advanced what am I thinking of? You know what I'm talking about on the Game Boy Advance, the tactical game, and it's such a cool looking style with the units and taking turns and moving and using your abilities, but it's so forced as to the outcome. Like, you don't have that much influence, and if you try to go outside of the influence of those tactical war battles, you're just gonna lose.
Yeah,
it really forces your hand to do one of the, which is almost like a community in itself of people trying to fight against what the game wants you to do, like with the refugees. Oh, you got to get them over here. You got to move this way. Oh, you need to retreat, and then you try to go into battle and mess it up anyway. But I think that might be a big thing for me. Is I actually like the rock paper scissors simple aspect, seeing the tiny little characters in the original just going across and battling it. Even though it is in a way more random, it doesn't feel as random because they're really like large scale duels. In a way.
Yeah.
But at least we had the duels in Suikoden 2.
Mm-hmm. In Suikoden 1, like, one thing I just liked is that feel for I think there's only 2 war battles that were actually like you couldn't win. The rest of them you all could. And I think in other of the titles in the series, a majority of the war battles were like kind of sort of scripted, like survive X amount of turns, or you just never finish the battle. Yeah. So I think that's one thing I do appreciate of some of the more simpler battles. Or I think in 4 there was a lot of battles where you actually had like eliminate all targets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 4 I like too, and that's another one that sort of is polarizing in the Suikoden community. I had issues with 3. 3 kind of bothered me, and because it was cool. I get the idea of, oh, let's show you. Because it's been so one-sided the first 2 games. You're only seeing the war and the rebellion from this one side. And clearly, you're the right group and they're wrong. You need to change them and rebel against them. And in 3, it was like, let's show 3 perspectives of the war so you can kind of see it from all sides. But I never got to fully connect with the main character. And I'm one of those RPG guys who prefers to name the main character. I'm one of those. And Corey and Try, yeah, that's right. Corey and Try always get on me because I will sometimes not play an RPG, an old school RPG, if you can't name the character, and they think that's the stupidest thing ever because they're like, oh, just give me a default name, and that's what really irritated them in the early. Because I don't believe because tier won't show up as a default name. You have to put something in.
So a lot of people assume that that's the canon name. It's the novelization name. Right. Actually, in the manga, he has another name, Louis.
Louis,
so,
yep, Louis.
So, sometimes stuff just, it's so popular, that name, that just it almost becomes fan canon. And it's just easier to reference a character by that rather than saying protagonist, hero of Suikoden 1.
Right, and I got so excited, which, again, Corey and Try were messaging me. They're like, did you see this? It's like, of course I saw that Eiyuden Chronicle is coming. It's game day. What are you talking about? Yes. And then I sent to them, I was like, what convinced me for sure to pledge was next to the main character's name, it said default name, which tells me you're going to be able to name the main character, and that nobody responded in our group chat about that because they were like, oh, that's stupid. Like, why do you care? But in the audio drama, I'm not super familiar with the audio dramas. For those of you who aren't Suikoden people, this is a deep dive, so just bear with us. You're gonna learn a lot. But the audio dramas, what did they use tier in that, or were they using Louis? I'm not certain about it.
I can't recall. They might just refer to him as Young Master.
That would be the most logical thing, because obviously with Gremio, that's what it would do. Yeah, I have
Those are available on YouTube with some subtitles.
Yeah, right. There was somebody who I think they put like gameplay footage with it, as they edited the text boxes to follow the drama, which I was like, that is amazing. I do have volume 1 of the audio drama on CD. I don't remember. I got it many years ago in my little Suikoden shrine, and I'm sure you've got many items. We should do a follow-up when Eiyuden Chronicle is over. We should do a follow-up and compare our collections of trinkets. Do you have any of the little strap runes?
Oh yeah, the phone
The
straps.
phone straps, yeah.
Straps are
Yeah.
charms.
Yeah, I was like, once I found out those existed, slippery
There's
slope.
a lot of quirky items, especially, because the popularity is Suikoden too. Like, so if you want some, Victor and Flick hand towels,
Yes! And there's like a
or
pocket
cookie
mirror.
jar.
There's a pocket
Oh,
mirror.
yeah. Yeah, my little blinking mirror. There's a few.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Actually, I put a blinking mirror, very subtle. No one would probably catch it, but blinking mirror reference in my most recent Game Dave episode, which was an episode of Family Corner where I sort of talk about the main character to collect one-ups. The one-up icon is a mirror. I was like, that's cool because you sort of, you're looking into the mirror, you get an extra self. And I was like, oh, I'll just do a mirror image of myself. I'll do that effect. And I was like, how do I transition to that? So I found it and I cut out the blinking mirror from the first game. And then I had it spin really quick as I transformed to that. And I'm like, yep, nobody's going to know that was the Suikoden blinking mirror, but had to be done. So Eiyuden Chronicle, before we go even deeper into the Suikoden wormhole, we at least got to talk a little bit more about it. The style is amazing. It's exactly what you would want, I think, for a modern game in that style. I'm so glad they kept the I guess you'd say 2.5D, because the characters are all beautiful sprite work, and then they're sort of in semi 3D environments, and a lot of people are saying it has an Octopath Traveler look to it, which I totally get, but with the more like, I guess you'd say 32-bit sprites, similar to Suikoden 1 and 2, instead of the more 16-bit look of Octopath Traveler. And Try, not to keep referencing them, they're going to have to be on the show quickly as many times as I say his name, but Try would always complain about the sort of shimmering effect that was in the sprite look of Octopath, and I don't see that in at least the trailer footage that we have seen, but man, it looks really good, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. And I think actually Murayama did. Somebody asked that question or posed it, and I think he said that he really liked the look of Octopath Traveler.
So I'm sure that was an influence in some way.
Yeah, definitely, I believe so.
And the towns, I will say that's one of the things in the first two games is the NPCs were very simple. If you go to a town, and there weren't that many, it was a lot of reuse of the same sprites for those. But that happened a lot in the early RPGs, even though that's not super early, but the PlayStation era. And it's interesting, they have that. There's that one clip in the trailer. If you haven't seen it, check out the trailers and everything and the clips. But when you're moving through that town, just it looks so crowded on that. I think it's like a pier. It looks like sort of a ship town, boating town, and there's just like full of characters. It almost looks ridiculous, like it's almost too many.
Yeah.
But that kind of impressed me too, and yeah, just that look, and it's that continuing theme of having sort of a traditional Chinese weapon for the main character instead of just let's give the main character a sword or something, which is awesome because you've got the sort of the Chinese hook weapons for the main character.
Yep.
And those look really good. I made sure that the tier that I pledged, pun intended, was the one that came with the miniature version of his weapon. It's my friend of the show, Noptop. Check his stuff out. He, for Christmas, made me replica Tonfa from Suikoden 2. And he's not a gamer by any means, but he's like, I'm going to figure this out for him.
I feel like I've seen that photo.
Yeah, I'm just like holding them. Yeah, you probably. Yeah, it's an intense thumbnail, but yeah, I was super excited. It was a really cool thing to have. But yeah, so Eiyuden Chronicle is definitely going to happen. The current plan is 2022, and I liked about the Kickstarter. It was almost, I don't know if it was intentional, but there was a little shade getting thrown. I don't know if it was towards Shenmue 3 or not. Which I also backed, and it was a very, very delayed game, and there were a lot of complaints about things like, seeing it pre-orderable, that's a word, on Amazon, and people hadn't even heard about getting their backer copies yet. And I know in the details there was like, we want to make sure the backers that support this game get the game before we push it out for retail. And I was like, that's a huge thing to applaud them for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we talked a little about that. I don't know what much you want to share. Do you want to share how crazy you went with your pledge for the Kickstarter? That sounds like
sure,
a no. So we're going to hide that, but that tells you, that's all you had to say. Now we know it's probably more than you should have. That's all we know. I went with the Trinity Squire, and I know that there was some confusion because there were so many levels for pledging. There's almost like there's like a handbook to follow to see. It's like, okay, I want this, this, and this, and these pieces. So, make sure that you really go through if you are gonna. And we both highly recommend that you check out the Kickstarter, and I highly recommend you support it because it's going to happen. It's hit the goal, so you don't have to worry about that. And you can get some, what will likely be once-in-a-lifetime items if you're a Suikoden fan. It's hard to track down a lot of those original Suikoden merch items. I know it's taken me a long time to get the ones that I do have, and there's ones that I'm just like, yeah, it's never going to happen. Like, I'm never going to get that particular item. And to be able to get these, even just the fact that one of the tiers has the soundtrack is major, because we know the music in the games has always been hugely impactful. What would you say is your do you prefer the Miki Higashino music to the later games?
Okay.
Here we go.
I'd say so. I really like Tier Crisis soundtrack too.
Okay.
And then it's sort of it's so hard because then it's like 3 has got my favorite. It's got my favorite intro with that, like, animated right? stuff. But then 4 is La Mer.
Yep, La Mer.
It's also a really good song. So
yeah, they're slick with those openings.
But yeah, I would say it's a really close between like Miki Higashino's work and then also Tier Christ as like a overall whole soundtrack for the game.
Now I will say this may take away from my fandom cred. I own it, but I've still not played the DS game because it's it is, from what I understand, very different. It is not. Are there 108 heroes or not in?
There are. They call them is it Marks of the Star or Star? I think they're just called Star Bearers actually.
Okay. And is it within, it's not in the same timeline, right? Is it like a different world spin-off?
Correct. World? It's in like 1,000 worlds. So I mean, if you got like a headcanon, you could easily tie in stuff. And I think it'd be an interesting conversation to have because we're talking about Eiyuden and what sort of elements we're looking for as fans of Suikoden to be in it. And I think Tier Christ did hit some of those because I know a lot of people will just be turned off because, as you said, from Final Fantasy to Suikoden, one thing that you really enjoyed was the continuity of the worlds and stuff like that. So I think immediately a lot of people were maybe turned off by that aspect in Tier Christ. But
yeah, I think that's what got me is that I knew it wasn't part of the timeline. I believe, I don't know if it's a spoiler or not, but is Vicky in it? Is she the only returning character, Vicky?
There are new returning characters.
There's none? Oh man, I thought maybe Vicky would, because I feel like she'd be the most logical one because of her teleportation issues. And she has been in all of the mainline games. She's like one of the few that has always shown up. Speaking of characters from Suikoden, we're going all over the place. Back to Suikoden 3. Who was your flame bearer, your flame champion for Suikoden 3?
The first playthrough?
Yeah, first playthrough.
First playthrough was Hugo. I was a kid. I related more to him. There's this older gentleman and then also a girl, so I just kind of naturally went with him. He's on the cover. I thought he was really cool looking.
And they consider Hugo canon, right?
In the manga, yeah, he is the one that bears it.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, in Suikoden 3, you could say that, as much as I complain about naming characters, in Suikoden 3, the change was, because there's 3 different characters, they had to have their own names. So the way they kind of got around it, which I did appreciate the cleverness of this, is that there's the flame bearer, the flame champion, who you do name at the beginning of the game, and it threw me because I was like, oh, okay, good, I can name my character, and then I get into the game, I'm like, where's my flame champion at? Where's me? And he even had a similar look to the first 2 heroes, and then you find out much later in the game that one of those three will become the Flame Champion, and you have the option to apply, which is so weird. They have the option to take, like they're getting married to the Flame Champion. They can take their name and it can be changed to whatever you put in, but only in all caps, which is also kind of weird. And I chose Geto. Geto was my choice because I was like, cool guy. And I was a little bit younger. I was like, yeah, look at him. He's like cool pirate kind of, but not. And yeah, but though I think now if I were to do it again, if it wasn't for the name aspect, I don't know. I probably would go with Chris. I don't know.
That's going to be my next playthrough. I did Geto my last. It's very interesting to see him because you also see that, I'm sure it's spoiler related, but I guess he also has a true rune that kind of relinquishes to somebody else. So it kind of shows there that, you can only have like the runes are like almost kind of sentient in their ways. Mm-hmm. I mean, some are actually vocal.
Yeah, exactly.
So it kind of like just shows that like, the history a little bit behind that. And I thought it was really interesting, who decided to latch on to and stuff like that. It was, since I didn't see that because, I wonder what happens with Chris, but seeing from what happened to Hugo, it like, just kind of like seemed to make more sense while the other one was just like, whoa, what's going on?
Yeah, exactly. So for those who don't know, I'm going to do this for you guys to keep you in the know. So the magic system and sort of the world creation of the Suikoden series is based around these runes, and there were the original runes that sort of broke away to create all of these smaller runes. It's kind of like you could look at it as materia if you wanted like a somewhat similar thing where you have these like huge major materia and then they sort of break into shards that become more, less powerful materia with abilities and spells. So you have these true runes, which are like the major, most powerful runes that most people don't have access to, and then from those are born these runes that can sort of, give you some abilities, but nothing too crazy. And usually our hero is a bearer of one of the true runes.
Mm-hmm. And surprisingly enough, in 3, the Tenkai, which traditionally is the main hero you control, does not get it.
No, and that also threw me a little bit because he was a kid, right?
I want to say so. I think he was
pretty young fella.
Yeah, I want to say like late teens.
Yeah, which also goes with the theme of Tenkai being a younger fella. I believe in Eiyuden Chronicle, I think he's 17, our main character, I believe, and so Thomas is the Tenkai star in Suikoden 3, which again really threw me. Because it just really kind of subverted expectations, which sometimes they say is a good thing. And he was sort of tasked with looking after your fortress, another continuing thing in Suikoden where you build up this headquarters, and that's one of the things that really drew me to the series, even though it feels like it tricks you to think it's like really impactful in the first game where you're really affecting this castle as it gets larger and larger, but there's really not that much to do in the original, aside from shops and maybe having little incidental conversations with the other 108 characters that you collect to build your army. Suikoden 2, of course, went nuts because I think the mini-games is what a lot of people think of when going back to headquarters is, the fishing mini-game. And, of course, the cooking Iron Chef, let's be honest, let's say what it is, the Iron Chef game within a game. And back to the Kickstarter, that is one of the stretch goals, was to have a cooking minigame. And do you think it's going to have that Iron Chef feel?
I think so. They've also listed a lot of people's favorite foods. So maybe you're supposed to, when making your 3-course meal or whatever, you should take those hints into consideration, or maybe those will actually be consumable items you can perhaps cook, and maybe they'll have enhanced effect on the people that prefer them.
Yeah, because that would happen a lot of times where you could actually have, sometimes you could even just collect them from enemies. You would get different food items as restoratives. I just always remember picking up crab balls walking around the world map, and and it's interesting to see the stretch goals. It's because I would say Murayama seemed nervous before the Kickstarter went live, at least from the translations that I was seeing. Because I believe it was right before it went live he tweeted what translated to, I believe, "I'm scared," right?
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, okay, this just the genuineness of like how much they care about this new IP is, and they want to be able to, because Suikoden was his baby, and in a way, not that it was taken from him, but I would feel like it was, because the heart and soul that he put in, he clearly loves the series so much, and to be able to, he said in the Kickstarter video that to be able to own it and be able to continue it and make it a series that they have control over and it's theirs, they don't have to worry about losing it again. It tricks me into thinking, did they think it was going to be as successful as it has been so far? Because 500,000 seemed, for Suikoden style things, seemed like a pretty lofty goal, because you don't think of the widespread. It probably doesn't help that, when I first played it, I didn't, I called it Suikoden because I didn't know. And I said that up until, I don't even know how long I called it Suikoden, and it was so hard for me to slowly start calling it Suikoden, And
you weren't too far off.
Yeah, right.
Not sure if, not sure Zero appreciate me saying this, but 01337 is the world record holder of a lot of the records. And when I first tuned in, he would call it Suikoden. So I thought that was a little far off. And he had world records then. I'm like,
wow, he's really
never
sticking to it. It might not be quite as bad as my good friend Jerome in high school, fellow Final Fantasy fan. That was the one series that all my high school buds loved, was Final Fantasy. We all played through them when they would come out. Couldn't get them to play Suikoden. And then we each had our own RPG that only one of us played. So for me, that was Suikoden. For my best friend at the time, it was Legend of Legaia. And then my third friend, it was Final Fantasy XI that none of us played, because I couldn't get my mind around the MMO thing, at the time at least. But Jerome, he would call them Chocobos. For some reason, thought the H was silent. I bet you've never heard that one.
No, have not.
And you never will. So Jerome, if you're watching this, I apologize. I apologize in advance. I'll have to message him and be like, hey, no offense, Jerome. But with Suikoden's impact, and which seems smaller than maybe but it could also be the fact that our community is so dedicated that's why the Kickstarter, obviously the pledge it's the most I've ever pledged for a Kickstarter ever. And I've backed, a couple Kickstarters in the past, and it's that weird thing of, I knew going into it, no matter what the levels were, I wasn't just going to get the physical game, like the normal, like $60 pledge. Shenmue 3, I just got the physical game, and that was it. I knew I was going to at least get a higher level than that, just one, to support, and two, just to get those sort of, those timeless things that you can always say, yeah, that was when I helped make this happen. It's probably the most excited I'll ever be for a Kickstarter in my life. I highly doubt there's going to be something that comes out that's as impactful. Like, I was there at noon. I was ready to go. And I was like, man, I want to be one of the first backers. And then I'm going through I did not realize how many support tiers there would be. So I was like, oh, well, I'm definitely not going to be the first guy to back this game. And do you think 500,000, do you think they thought they were going to crush that goal so quickly?
I think they knew they were going to beat it. They were definitely going to achieve it. I just don't think they thought they were going to achieve it in an hour.
Right.
And I think the whole part of the Kickstarter was to kind of gauge interest. I mean, yeah, Murayama put out a video earlier today, which is on the Kickstarter. It's on the update. I forget what they're calling this phase, the thing. Mm-hmm. But he did say he really wanted to know if he was going to make a game, if people would be interested in playing it. So I think that is what the Kickstarter is really gauging. But one cool thing for people that maybe be on the fence is that you will get, everybody that backs it will get a beta key. I'm pretty sure that's what it listed, or maybe you had to get at least a digital version.
I saw that change, because originally it was for the physical backers, I think, and then they've officially, they were like, oh, sorry for the confusion. Yep, we're gonna make sure that backers get access to the beta, which is huge. But what kind of made me nervous initially right before I started pledging was I saw that, of course, I wanted it on console. I feel like it needs to be on PlayStation. I'll probably go the PS5 route when we get there. That just feels like it. I mean, I'll get it on all the platforms that I have just to support. And if it comes out on whatever the new Switch might be, if we get that, of course, I'll pick that up as well. But seeing that the consoles was, $1 million, so initially thinking it might only be on PC, and then the fact that the Fortress headquarters mode was a stretch goal as well, it makes me think, they couldn't make this game without that. They have to have the HQ in the game. So I think they probably did know, but yeah, I think it was just that nervousness of putting it all out there. Maybe that's why Maruyama posted, "I'm scared." But that made me want to give even more, because I showed my friend who's completely he's not in the gaming community. I had him look at the Kickstarter video, and I was like, is this not the most charming, genuine, and sincere freaking thing you've ever seen on a Kickstarter? It was just so, like, it made you feel like kids running around, like, he's like, get the cardboard, and they build the little HQ out of cardboard and bringing the army together to make this happen. And just like, I mean, I just love it. I'm just sitting there in the beginning. I was like, did not expect that they would have filmed
like a home movie.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was so perfect, and I mean, they're knocking it out of the park. Now, with those stretch goals, of course, this is called 100 Heroes, and we all know the Suikoden series is known for the 108 Stars of Destiny, which is pulled from the Water Margin, where this sort of was inspired. And for those of you who don't know, that's a very ancient Chinese novel. And then Suikoden is sort of the Japanese title of it, which is where that comes from. Because in Japan, it's Genso Suikoden. I would imagine to maybe avoid confusion. I don't know. Do you know why it's not Genso here?
It's probably just for like localization. They probably thought we wouldn't know and just keep with like a title. Might be a better reason for that.
Let's keep it simple. We'll just call it a name that nobody can pronounce and not have any voice acting. That's what we'll do. Suikoden. You know what? The first time, which is kind of topical, the first time I heard it said correctly, at least, well, even then I wasn't sure if it was correct, was on X-Play. And it was Adam Sessler talking about the third game. And he said Suikoden, and I was like, what? Because I mean, I hadn't taken any Japanese or anything like that, so I didn't know at the time. So I was like, oh, clearly he's wrong. Clearly Adam Sessler doesn't know what he's talking about. But yeah, so that was the first time I heard it. And I mean, I took Japanese in college, and of course with the internet, I was like, oh, yep, that's it. And for the retrospective, I put one of the original Japanese commercials. I don't know if you've seen that. It's the commercial of them with the robe and they're walking through the forest. I was like, what a unique commercial. And just hearing Genso Suikoden. I was like, yep, okay, it's confirmed. I had to start working. On getting it right. But going back to the 108, my assumption was to sort of distance, the army would be made up of, pulling together 100 heroes, even though it doesn't say one. But now we're seeing with these stretch goals, the stretch goals are actually adding additional heroes. And I've been seeing the posts say like the 104th character. And is that confirmed that they're going beyond the 100 heroes with these stretch goals?
That's what I believe it means to be.
So do you think that they have just enough to stop at 108, or do you think they're going to go past that?
I have no idea, because I mean, even though there was 108 in a lot of the speaking games, there were some recruitable characters that didn't count towards the tablet, so there could be more.
You know what? That's right. Because if we want to talk about, if we want to get deep and talk about flying squirrels, of course, there's more than there's one that counts and many others that you can collect. And of course, the original hero shows up in Suikoden 2 if you do it right, and he's not on the board, which is interesting. It's like, does every war, Luke just gets in there and just scrubs it up, all right, now we're gonna swap all these out. Even it's only been a couple years, but we're gonna forget those. That's a new 10K star. That's something that always kind of threw me. I wonder how that works. It's like maybe like Not's understanding of these pivotal events in the world require new tablets, I guess. Kind of threw me. What this would be a good question. So you struggle with that, which is best, 1 or 2? Is that you have that struggle as well?
It always seems like whenever you try to do a rankings list in the Suikoden fandom, it always gets very polarizing because a lot of people have a certain game at the end, and then it turns into gatekeeping in a way. But I it's like you said, they're all part of one interconnected story. Plus, one thing that I really liked about the Suikoden series, once I first got into 2, was the data transfer. Like I didn't really see any other games at the time really do that.
Nope. Yeah, that was something that pushed me for sure when I saw that. And then when 3 came out, just the fact that I was like, oh, well, there goes that. And then, nope, they figured out a way to get your Suikoden 1 data into this PS2 game, PS1 to PS2 transfer. And that just, I mean, it didn't do nearly as much, obviously. It's not like you could bring back the original heroes or anything, which wouldn't really make sense with the way 3 is. It's just such a cool feature, and I know some of the things are, 1 to 2 is obviously the biggest, I think, unless you want to get into the tactics discussion, because that's pretty major. Tactics brought it back, and that made me
a lot of people sleep on that because maybe a lot of people didn't go on it because it's a different genre, and also maybe just a lot of they heard the game that transfers into it that might have affected. But I think they're both a lot. Like I really like the data transfer into tactics as well.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, tactics is basically, I was a big fan of Final Fantasy Tactics, loved it, played the heck out of it. So when I saw, PS2 is getting a Suikoden Tactics game that sort of connects with 4, I was super pumped. And then you can bring the hero from Suikoden 4 over if you have that data. And it's... Do you have any insight on... So the final mainline game that we got was Suikoden 5, which was also for the PS2. And how do you feel, or do you have any insight on what happened with our data transfer situation there? Because you can't load 4 into 5.
Right. Yeah. There's you load it into tactics, so 4 is covered that way. But I see what you're coming from. I think it's just because there's 4 was 150 years before 1, so I think that makes 5 like 148, 49 years after 4. Yeah. So I think it's just such a large gap. Like, what could you really transfer over? It probably, if they did do stuff, it'd probably be more along the lines of what you got in Suikoden 3, which was like a play and some references to older stuff.
That's right.
Because they did talk about the island nations, but yeah.
yeah. Oh, there it is. There's the name kind of transferred from what I named the castle, but not quite. Yeah. So that's another sort of which I think is charming now. At the time, it frustrated me, but so another fun thing about the early games is there are some translation issues, and there are some buggy. There are some buggy things involved with the transfers, because the whole idea initially was if you're going to transfer the first game into the second game, that the original hero is going to show up. And of course, if you named them, they should show up with that name. Why would it be different? And then they sort of had a built-in default, which was the character's last name, McDole, and then it would sort of overwrite that default name with whatever name from the load, which kind of threw me because why did they need to even have McDole in there if he only shows up with the data being loaded? So you'd think he's going to have a name anyway, but it only transfers capital letters, correct?
Over any capital letters you have in Suikoden 1 name, it will overwrite, like you said, McDole. So if you had like tier in all caps, it would be Tyrol.
Yeah. Right.
So if you go all lowercase, you're perfectly fine. Or if you play the PAL region, you're also don't have to worry about that glitchy bug. They won't. They'll do it right. Just in the North American copy.
Yep. So for me, I named the main character Dave, and a lot of the deep Game Dave fans already know this story. But named the main character Dave. I see him in this village. I'm like, wait, that's him. I get there, and his name is Dick Dole, because I did capital D, lowercase AVE. And now I wonder if I had done capital D, capital A, capital V, capital E, and then put spaces in there, would that overwrite those remaining spaces? There'd just be a gap in the text, I would imagine.
That's a good question.
Something
I'm
to mess
not
with, because
sure.
that might be the one way to get around that. But, Dick Dole, so it takes the first letter, which was capital, replaces the M. And that's, I think, the experience for the majority of people who played both and transferred that perfect data over with the 108 stars. That's their experience. They get there, and, but ironically, as your handle online, Dreamy Warrior, you've experienced the Dick Dole before.
Yep, exactly. It's the DC capital DOHL.
Yep. You got it. Yeah, I went by that handle for quite a while on the internet, actually, Dave Dick Dole, and it was a weird one to explain as it got older, because it doesn't sound good. It doesn't sound good. It's like, no, it's DC, like Mick Donald. It's fine. So I'm hoping we'll see some more entries in Eiyuden Chronicle, depending on how well this comes out, and they gotta do it. They gotta do the save data transfer if they sort of go that way. But I'm looking at the new stretch goals at this point, and we've got Korean localization, which is always good to have as many languages as possible, and then that 2.6 million goal, real brass, having a full orchestra for the score. Just obviously we're gonna get there at this point with having so many days left. That's going to be great. And then 2.7 million where it is right now. Of course, this will be different when you guys see this out there, but Words with Friends is what you can see on the stretch goal. So whatever that may mean, maybe it's my initial thought was library related, because there was always a librarian in a way. You gave the old books over to somebody that you would find in the game, but who knows? You probably know more than I do, but we'll. Yeah. You slick fella. This is why John with an H is here. Okay, he's keeping us grounded. But yeah, so the Kickstarter. If you have any interest in that era of RPGs, and if you have any interest in the Suikoden series, you have to. There is no question. This is a worthy investment. And from what the rumors are with the next gen consoles, there's claims that the games are going to be more expensive. I think there's rumors that they might be $70 games in the future generation. So now might be the time to get one PS5 game for less than $70. So if anything, do that. But yeah, I highly recommend it, and check out the footage. It looks so good. It's got the 6-person parties, which is one of the things people like to complain about with Suikoden 4. And, 5, of course. 5 almost feels like the Final Fantasy 9 of Suikoden, because it kind of harkens back to the originals. And I think that at least that was the goal.
Yeah. Trying to recapture some of those people from that, like the earlier games.
And I really appreciated 5. It had the musical style was very unique, I think, compared to the other games. But that could be said about 3 as well. 3 has sort of an odd MIDI-ish feel to it at times, and I don't know. But regardless, they're all great, and all of the original games. If you're an RPG fan, I mean, clearly, it's a great series to enjoy, and Eiyuden Chronicle is just going to continue that. So please, I recommend you make a movement over to that Kickstarter and do some work on there. And also with the Suikoden Revival movement, make sure you follow those guys. John, he does a lot of work with them, and great people there. And they're doing their best to get the word out even more, because the Suikoden fans are on it. They've probably already supported it. So now it's time to sort of push outside of that world and make this community larger. And follow them. There's a Facebook page, Twitter. Get on that, and you can get really good updates and insights on really anybody that's talking about Suikoden. And is there anything else with the revival movement before we just talk more Suikoden? Because I got some questions I want to get into.
I mean, you covered it all pretty much. I'd say if you're maybe an influencer and want to reach out to us, I'll provide the link to Dave here for email inquiries. But we're heavily trying to promote this game, and especially to Western audiences where the reach isn't. Well, we assumed it wasn't as strong, but we see the Kickstarter is actually showing the U.S. is actually one of the highest backing nations right now. So
wow, that is major. And yeah, I know Japan. It's that weird thing of here. You know, if you want to get a copy of Suikoden 2 used, you're breaking that $100 threshold easily. Whereas in Japan, it's a bargain bin common PlayStation game. You know, you can get the best of version for like $1. It's kind of weird, but it's just so big. It's almost, you wouldn't think of it, but Suikoden in Japan is almost on that level of like how Dragon Quest is just such a mainstream thing there. And Suikoden, I mean, it holds its own in especially the community there. It's hugely important, and other countries too. There's other countries that are surprisingly intense about Suikoden.
yes.
So, you know, and again, you'll find their Twitter accounts as well out there. But so talk a little bit about Suikoden before we close up. I know we're already going long, but that's okay because as long as you're still in with it, John with an H, you good to keep going?
Yeah, I'm absolutely.
Great.
I feel like we just scratched the surface here a little bit.
Excellent. Well, when you get bored and you hate me, let me know and we'll call it. So with Suikoden, we talked a little bit about some of our feelings on the series. You touched a little bit on the fact that you like the retro RPGs. What would you say is after Suikoden? What is your second favorite RPG franchise?
Oh boy, I played a lot recently, and some games where I thought I wouldn't be so invested into. I'm really missing it. 4 months later.
Right.
Let's see. Well, I can say where I started off with even before speaking, because I know you said you started off the NES and stuff. I have a lot of older brothers, so 4 older brothers and 1 older sister, so I come from a big family.
Right.
So I'm not sure if you ever had to compete for save card memory or cartridge memory, only having 3 things, but I definitely did.
Yeah.
So when they were all on the PlayStation and N64, I was playing the Super Nintendo, and my intro was definitely Final Fantasy VI, which was 3 on the Super Nintendo,
Mm-hmm.
and then also Chrono Trigger, and also Super Mario RPG. So those were kind of my intros to RPGs, but I also really liked a lot of other stuff on the console, like Donkey Kong and Super Mario World.
Mm-hmm.
But Suikoden was my first for the PlayStation 1. That was my first JRPG.
Right.
But after Suikoden, what would be my favorite?
I know it's tough.
It's tough.
Yeah.
I'm kind of going between Wild Arms and also Shadow Hearts, which was a recent play, which I'm just I missed the Judgment Ring and the interactivity of the combat system.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I like that. I like the deep cut. Shadow Hearts. That's good. Wild Arms, of course. I mean, if you like a little bit of that Western flavor, I mean, Wild Arms is highly, highly recommended. I mean, the first game is just super good. And they actually, Alter Code F, I think, is a remake of the first game,
yeah.
Right? So that's a little pricey, but worth it if you want something a little more, graphically, handleable. If you're not, if you can't, because it's an older game for sure. But to me, most RPGs on that original PlayStation, that's sort of my wheelhouse when it comes to my interest overall. I do like modern RPGs, but there is something that is missing sometimes with those. I did finish Final Fantasy VII Remake. For those who might be wondering out there, I did a little video on the demo, and I had some opinions about it, which, people are always going to agree to disagree. And I was all right with it. It's not my go-to RPG style, but I got through the game and I enjoyed it. But Breath of Fire is a great series. I always enjoyed the Breath of Fire series, starting with the Super Nintendo. But the Super Nintendo RPGs, I didn't get into them as deeply until the PlayStation, because I missed 2 and 3. played the original. My friend had 2 and 3, which are 4 and 6, and it wasn't until Final Fantasy Anthology, which had 5 and 6, that I was able to experience those, and I was like, oh wait, 5, and I really enjoyed 5. Just that job class system really hit hard with me. I know a lot of people love 6. 6 was fine. I didn't particularly fall in love with 6, and I hate to say this, it might have to do with, you could name any character in that game, but it was hard to say, because Terra's obviously the main character, but who do I name as my main character? I don't know. Setzer? That's who I chose, because he owns the airship, so he's cool enough. And I think I didn't feel connected. Like, my thing is I want to be the protagonist and fully, like, that's me. So in Suikoden, I'm the hero dealing with this rebellion or whatever. And with 6, it was tricky because it was kind of everybody's story. So I didn't really latch on to anyone specific. Great game, but it just didn't hit the same way for me. And now with, Final Fantasy, I mean, naming characters, that's pretty much out the door at this point. So voice acting. This is not going to have voice acting, right? As far as we know, Eiyuden Chronicle.
I think Murayama said he wants to.
Okay.
I saw in one interview saying that, I think somebody said, will they have English and, like a dubbed version, as well as like an original Japanese. And I think he said, at the very least, he'd like to include both.
Right. Okay.
So maybe limited voice acting, like probably not for every single line, like the Secret of Mana remake, how every single NPC would be voice acted. But And going back to Wild Arms for a moment, to relate it to the Kickstarter, the composer of Wild Arms is working on this project as well.
Yes. Highly recommend that soundtrack as well. Even used it in the most recent Family Corner episode for, beloved character Cowboy Crutches, who has this is his first appearance on the channel. Thanks for that intro, Cowboy Crutches. With Wild Arms, I would think that I wouldn't have liked it because I'm not generally Western stuff, cowboy-esque stuff doesn't interest me. I was never a fan of like cowboy movies or anything. Even I'm a huge Back to the Future fan, and when I was younger, 3 was my least favorite, just because I just didn't like the Western thing. But as I've gotten older, actually 3 is one of my favorites in the series now. But Wild Arms, there's just something that was like a perfect mix, that fantasy and that Western. It just so unique. I
love Wild Arms 3 as well.
Yeah. Super unique, just flavor to it. But yeah, Wild Arms is a great series to check out. One of the more now this is actually an episode of the channel. I'd like to do a video on the channel about this game, which is Guardians Crusade on the original PlayStation. Not sure if you're familiar. So Guardians Crusade it's an RPG. It's turn-based. It's got a rough look to it. Probably didn't age well because it did do the fully 3D world, and it looks very kiddie. The idea is you're sort of bequeathed this pink baby thing. You just call it baby. You don't really know what it is. It ends up being a baby dragon, but it's this goofy sort of game, and you collect these like magic little gadget creature things, and you use them in your battles. Highly recommend checking out that game. I'm probably going to have to take a look at that game, a little retrospective, because it's one that not a lot of people know about, and it's deceivingly good because it just looks like it looks more simplistic than Quest 64, to put it into maybe a way that someone might get it. And a lot of people dog on Quest 64. This is good. Guardians Crusade is a good, so I recommend checking that one out. So we talked a little bit about Suikoden 4, and Suikoden 4 I think is very specific to you, John, because you have what I would think of as a very coveted item in the Suikoden merch world, an item that I know about and have never, would never even dream the possibility of getting one. But there is because Konami, they love gambling, and Konami likes to put out their IPs for things, and there is a Suikoden 4 patchy slot machine And John, you have one.
I do.
So you got to tell me. I wouldn't let you tell me before when we met. How in the heck did you get a Suikoden 4 patchy slot machine?
I got it from Japan.
So how did that? Did you just order it in, import it? Did you get it in Japan? How did that? I don't even understand.
Yeah, I have a few friends in Japan. And at first I was trying to go through Importer, who actually I'm still in really good contact with, and he's been great. Who's based in Connecticut, and originally they found one for me, but then and I paid for it, but then the deal fell through because they needed to repair something in it, and it was like a while because we were just waiting for like 2 months, and eventually. My importer's like, yeah, I'm just getting a little sketchy feeling about this, so I'm just going to issue like a refund. And I'm like, okay. It's like, keep your eye out for me. Mm-hmm. So I eventually found one, and I just ordered it there, had it picked up from that warehouse, and with the whole shutdown thing, I was a little bit worried, but. I think because things were slower, it was a little bit actually easier to get out. And I have a friend, or my cousin actually works in a shipyard in Connecticut, Groton. So, I guess just a perfect combination of things to help ease the blow of how much it would normally cost to import. Luckily, with the US and Japan, there are no import fees because I do know a lot of collectors. And you have to like provide receipts for some stuff while importing into their country. Like I know my friend in Spain got hit with like a ridiculous fees.
Yeah.
Almost as much as they paid to ship it and the cost of the item combined, so they were paying double. But yeah.
I've heard that about some of the other countries. Yeah, that's like I'm really only importing things when I do get them from Japan. I haven't really delved into any other countries yet. I think I may have gotten some things from Germany once or twice, but I'm not certain. And France, I've got a couple things from France, but mostly Japan. Obviously, I do a lot of things about the Famicom, so of course that's where I'm gonna find most things. It's always funny how if somebody says like used condition for a game in North America, and it's definitely used, and then Japan it'll say like, oh, this is like C- condition, and I was like, what are you talking about? This looks brand new. Like just the way things are cared for, it's like seems so different. So how long have you had the patchy slot machine now?
Let's see, because I purchased it, but I had to arrange shipping for a little while. Right. Probably, what are we in? We just hit August, right?
Yeah, you're about to. Yep. It's a couple months now?
4 or 5 months.
Okay. So does it seem pretty well made? I mean, it just seems like such a... Obviously, I don't have any familiarity with that specific type of machine, but...
The difference between pachinko and patchy slows is that, like, pachinkos have metal balls, and the patchy slows kind of have, like, a TV monitor at the top. So you're actually, like, seeing a little bit of gameplay footage. Mm-hmm. There's some HD, versions of the 3D models from 4, so that's really cool to see.
Yeah, for sure. That's like probably the only way they exist, which is super cool. But also, if Konami ever decides to, take a look at a Kickstarter that blew up and, be like, we could, Final Fantasy VIII got HD remastered, maybe we could just, not going to tell them how to do their job, but I mean, they clearly have the ability if they're going to put it in a patchy slot machine. So... Yeah, but that is very impressive. Like that's a crazy item. Again, I'll definitely if you enjoy yourself today, I'd love to have you back on the show in the future, and we could talk more about some maybe collecting things. And is Suikoden the main thing you collect for when it comes to things outside of just games?
Yeah, absolutely. It started with my friend Marina, like really helped me. I was just just trying to get a few things, like trying to get the all the figures and. Maybe all the manga. Mm-hmm. And then it kind of just escalated from there because, them being a collector, they're like had all these stuff from like 8 years ago. It's like, I have duplicates and stuff. And I was like, oh yeah. So that they really helped me, determine what is a good price, because there are some stuff that you can find on eBay that are from Japan, mm-hmm. but they're kind of really highly marked up. And it's not always the case just because, they had to import it. It's just like, maybe some people don't like dealing with intermediaries in order to buy something and then ship it, where, these people on eBay already went through that process. But it's just it's really expensive, I guess, if you try to buy in-state than actually getting it from the country itself, if you can manage to find it.
Right, yeah. I haven't done the intermediary where you have the person that kind of imports it for you and gets it to you. I've not tried that yet. I've just, I just do the very obscure thing of, I always try to get from Japan directly. And obviously shipping is the big thing, where a lot of times you'll see, a pack of original Suikoden cards, and they'll be very affordable, but the shipping is like insane. And sometimes it's realistic. It's like, yeah, shipping can be tricky. And sometimes it's like, okay, clearly you're going to make the money on the shipping. But yeah, that's where a lot of my stuff. There you go. There it is. He's ready to play a match right now. We're going to have a virtual match through Digitally Distracted. I do have a couple of the starter packs. But I think the first thing that I started collecting with this Suikoden merch was I was trying to get all of the guidebooks, because it's just a ridiculous... Because here, you'll get one strategy guide for an RPG. Usually a Brady Games or whatever. And then over there, there's they release so many different... oh no, this is the Suikoden 1 and 2 World Encyclopedia guide. This is the Heroes guide. This is the strategy guide. This is the Konami Plus Crazy guide. So I started hunting down all the different guides for the original games, just for the artwork. It's almost like just having an art book that's also a guide that I can't read. Though another friend of the show is supposedly going to help me. He's a fan. I've met him at conventions before, and more recently he was like, I teach Japanese. I was like, that's my job. He's like, I'll teach you Japanese. I'm like, okay, we'll see. It's gonna be tough teaching a teacher. I'm stubborn, but I'll try. Because I took Japanese in college for a semester, and I did really enjoy it, but it was just that early stage. So I just hope I'm not, my brain isn't too old where I can't learn another language. But yeah, I would love to if I was gonna learn something. But so once I got the guides, then I got the figures, and then collecting the manga. That was the next thing. I had to get the official ones, and then the fandom gets pretty deep. There's also the fan. I don't even know what they're called, but there's yeah. So there's those two, and that threw me at first. I was like, wait, is this official? And then starting to learn how that works, and then finding out that you can get little magic rune phone straps of the game from the games, and it's tricky. There's probably even more merch out there. There's a particular eBay seller out there who's got everything, and I always see his stuff, and it's I have bought from him before, but he's got some things that the PC game. He's listed that before, which is very hard to find. And what's some other? He also had, I think it was a calendar, one of the calendars, and then he had a sticker set of, I think it might have been from Suikoden 2, and it was a sticker set and a poster, and it was all the 108 heroes as stickers. They would stick on it, and he had never opened it. And I was like, man, I want that, but I've sort of stopped getting the merch because, as you know, it can get very expensive. But yeah, Suikoden's one I like to collect for, and of course Final Fantasy. Have you you said you played 2 and 3 in the early days. Did you kind of where's Final Fantasy fall on your list? Is it up there in your RPG fandom?
2 and 3 of Final Fantasy. I played 6 on the Super Nintendo, which was Final Fantasy 3.
3. Okay, so you didn't play 2 back then, just 3. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then also I played Final Fantasy Tactics, and those are the only I played a lot of people when you pick up a game, put it down, especially since I had so many siblings and only have limited access to those consoles since they'd be in those rooms.
Right.
I would play probably the first couple of hours of a lot of them. I can remember playing, a little bit of 7, the escape opening scene,
Mm-hmm.
And then 8, I just remember liking the card game a whole lot, but I don't think I got very far either. 9, I still remember that distinct style of the Black Mage for VV, and then 10, I think was the last one I actually played a little bit of with Titus.
Yeah, I always said Titus, but of course it's now Titus officially, which
okay.
I guess makes sense because the I in Japanese.
I am thinking about getting into that series a little bit more. It's so mainstream, I guess. It's like I kind of like you always hear Suikoden's like the hidden gem, or it's very niche. Where I guess I've always kind of wanted to find out other RPGs that really kind of didn't get that spotlight, that kind of got drowned out by perhaps Final Fantasy, since it was kind of always
and there's a lot, especially on the original PlayStation, that just people don't know, and a surprising number of tactics RPGs in that style of Final Fantasy Tactics that work similarly that just no one has heard of or talks about. Well, after the show, feel free to message me because I can share some with you. But yeah, that's interesting to have that perspective though, because you just assume somebody who is that invested in the Suikoden series, clearly they're Final Fantasy fans, right? It's only logical, and I get that totally. I played all of them up to 10. And 10 is kind of where I was like, all right, I'm done. And because it's just too much. And then I did come back and do 15. I did a review of 15 on my channel. It kind of brought me back a little bit. I kind of was okay with 15. And 7 Remake almost has a similar feel to just that style of 15. But yeah, after 10, and we were talking about voice acting earlier, that Murayama would like to have voice acting in Eiyuden Chronicle. And I wonder if, because of that ability to name the main character, if he'll kind of go that route of, like you said, either limited voice acting, or if it'll dance around your character's name like Final Fantasy X does. Because you can name Tidus, but they always just, it's like that thing in most conversation. If you're hanging out with somebody in a group, you're not constantly saying each other's names. You just say, hey, man, or hey, can you hand me that? So you can really get around never having the characters say the main character's name, so which I always feel like, but now with most RPGs, if there's voice acting, you can pretty much guarantee you're not going to name the character. But I don't know. The technology should be there, right, to where it says, you should be able to say your name based on what you type in. It's got to be there.
Yeah, you'd hope so.
Yeah. So let's see here. This might be tricky. Which would you say? None of them are bad, but let's just play with me for a little bit here. Which of the mainline Suikoden games, 1 through 5, is the worst? I know it's not a word we would ever use, but just for the game, which would you say is the least Suikoden game in the 5? I know. Ooh, I should have gave you the questions ahead of time. Mentally prepare.
It's just hard because I never want to say anything bad about any of them. The least.
Which one did you want more from? Maybe that's a way that you can get through it. For me, it was 3. I got to put it out there. 3 was the one that threw me.
And how many times have you played 3?
I played it twice. Once, which usually what I do with RPGs, being crazy, is I'll play it blind. And then I'll play it a second time where I'll go crazy, because there's so much to miss that if you don't have a strategy guide, you're gonna miss stuff, and unless you just have learned the game so well. And especially like Suikoden 2, I would say for sure. Suikoden 1, you could probably catch most things, but Suikoden 2, there's a lot that you will not. If it's your first time playing it, you're just gonna miss so much. So I'll usually do a second playthrough and try to get every little scene and nook and cranny that I can. And I'll just sit there side by side with a printed guide and go through it. But yeah, that second, I played it through twice, did get out both times. And just something, I don't know. I need to play it again. It was many years ago that I last played Suikoden 3.
Yeah, I think each one game has its strengths and weaknesses. It's weird because, we both said how much we love 1, but one thing that I wanted a little bit more from was kind of like at the end. I guess I was expecting to fight the villains, and you kind of get this other, you sort of, and then maybe you think you're going to fight that villain, and then all of a sudden a cutscene happens, and it's kind of just goes on by, which is kind of interesting because if you look at the old, they like revealed Suikoden, the original one, at some convention, and they actually showed a duel with Barbarossa. So that would have been like something cool where it's not really a entire battle.
That would have been great. Yeah, for sure.
I would have loved to seen him, since you in the end of one you had two other people along with the main character locked into your party, which were Flick and Victor.
Mm-hmm.
And Victor has a true rune incarnated into his sword, and so does Barbarossa. So that would have been an epic duel to see, which I really personally would like to witness. Seeing two runes kind of duke it out.
Yes, that would have been awesome for sure. Well, I'll let you off the hook then, and instead, we'll keep it positive. Who is your favorite non-main character, non-hero protagonist in we'll say from 1 and 2, because they share the most characters. So between 1 and 2, who would you say is your favorite party member outside of course the hero?
Blue Lightning, Flick.
Of course. Now I had a feeling, based on what I've seen on your social media, that would be the one, and that is mine as well. Flick has always been my favorite character. Just the way he kind of grows from 1 to 2, and
you saw that in reverse, though, from what you told me.
Yep, and I saw it in reverse.
So I'm wondering how that felt.
It was very weird because, he was obviously not a fan of the main character in the first game. It took him a while to come around, and in 2 he was already like Flick and Victor are just an amazing duo, like just great. Like they so missed in the later games but what are you gonna do? I would like to have more of them in the games, but it is what it is. But I felt he was very much like a father figure that was like a tough dad, which is funny because Victor's like, he's the rough, gruff guy. But in 2, he kind of like takes you in and like, and Flick tests you, of course, but he was not as harsh as he was in the first game. He was kind of like, kind of mean. It's weird. You'd think Odessa would have made him, given him that softer side. You'd think the loss of Odessa, spoilers, would make him more mean. So that kind of threw me that he was actually a little more gruff when she was still with you. But of course he was kind of blaming you for her death, as you do. But yeah, just his stories, come from the Warriors Village, and yeah, just his look too. Seeing the Kickstarter, a lot of people were saying, "Oh, look, there we go. We got the two buds from Suikoden 2. It's very similar." But I get some deep Flick vibes from that character from the Kickstarter. Just the blue and the
Crusade.
Yeah, kind of gets me a little bit. But yeah, Flick, amazing character. That's good. Well, there's that best party member, Flick.
We were talking about Noah, how his resemblance looks like a lot of people that Junko has Kawano has worked on before. Like we were saying, kind of looks a little bit like McDowell, like you said. Mm-hmm. Also, some Kirill vibes from Tactics.
Yeah, I get to see that with the hair for sure.
And then color scheme down, just kind of like your shirt. It looks like Rio. So yeah. It looked like a blend. Although that was a different artist in 2, but like there are just so many good comparisons I see a lot of people in community making.
Yeah, I mean, there's even a little bit of the Flame Champion in there, because the Flame Champion kind of has similar looks. But yes, of course, I'm wearing my, got my Joust and Alliance shirt on today. I was trying to rep a little bit, and I got the shirt many years ago, and wow, so glad I picked up a treadmill, because this was a tough fit. It was a tough fit getting this on for the video. Yeah, so the Suikoden series is something that obviously means a lot to both of us, and yes, definitely favorite series of all time, and people missed it for whatever reason. This is definitely the time, I think, to really re-experience. There's so many ways, even if you don't have a PS3, you can experience these games, of course, and the hope, Konami has to know that this is happening. So I'm sure that I would hope. They're doing a lot of things with Castlevania, so I feel like it's a possibility they might see this. And I'm sure that's what Murayama would want, is that they do get re-released in a way that, more modern gamers can go back and experience them. Because it can be tricky to do it in a way that is, let's say, legal. Obviously, you can emulate anything nowadays, but I if you got a PS3 and you've never played them, I highly recommend you buy them, because that's just going to show, Konami, why are people buying this up? And I wonder if those PSN sales will go up from people wanting to put money into the series to actually experience those first games. But you got the first two. If you look at this game and this Kickstarter and you feel like you could be a fan of it, the first two games are definitely for you. 3, 4, and 5, it's gonna feel different. But yeah, those first two for sure I would recommend. If you like the look of Eiyuden Chronicle, that's what you need to do, for sure. Now, I don't want us to keep going too long, because we've gotten deep. But again, like I said, the invite's there if you ever want to come back on Digitally Distracted. We'd love to have you. And thank you so much for kicking off this return. We'll call it Season 2 of Digitally Distracted. And John, feel free. Go ahead and share, where can people find you? Where do you want to direct them? If, this is their first time seeing you, what would you like to share with everybody?
I'm on Twitter. Handle is at DreamyWarrior00. Also on Twitch with that same handle. I guess you could tag at SRM on Twitter or on Facebook. You can also, all those folks are really nice, so you probably want to talk to any of them. Or would. I said would, right?
Yeah. Yes, would.
Would want to talk to any of them. just clarify there.
Yeah.
But yeah, one other thing I'd like to mention is for the Kickstarter is that there's also lots of social media goals there as well. So even if you don't, maybe not sure if you want to back yet, or if you have, financially able to back it, retweeting, liking, posting artwork on Instagram is going to unlock stuff for the game, or unlock stuff for the backers too, maybe like a little more extra in their goodie bag for their backing. So everybody, check that on the Kickstarter as well.
Mm-hmm. And there's also a Discord, right, where they're doing some things with that as well.
Mm-hmm. There is an official Eiyuden Discord, and I'm over there too. So if you want to say hi, feel free to come by.
And I haven't gotten in there yet, but I need to. Now, I don't know, is there how does that work with do you have to link Kickstarter to Discord? Because I believe there are Discord roles specific to your pledges. Is that right?
Yeah, and a lot, that's been a question a lot of people have had. Those won't be actually given out until after the Kickstarter, because people can cancel their pledges along with other reasons.
Right.
So you guys will receive that hopefully in a few weeks after the close of the Kickstarter, mm-hmm. which I think the last day now, it got extended again, which would be the 29th of August, which would be the last day in the US. I think it's the 30th in Japan.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, yeah, there's plenty of time for you to go in and support this. We think it's going to be fun. Of course, you got to wait a little bit, but that's the fun of Kickstarter is, you're making this happen, and it's not like the Kickstarter is going to end and you're just sitting there with nothing for 2 years. There's so many things that the team is doing to keep you interactive, and, having the Discord and, these other goals outside of just, pledging. It's going to keep it on your mind to give you things to think about as we get closer and closer. And, we hope 2022 it does happen and we stay on track. And I'm super excited for it. And again, thank you so much, John, for being on the show. And thank you, viewers, for getting digitally distracted with us.